Okay, so let's just get right to it. Who was the greatest American president? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, right? But the answer, well, that's where things get complicated. So, how do we actually measure something like presidential greatness? Let's dive in.
No, really, think about it for a second. What's the metric? Is it about winning wars, managing the economy? Is it about moral leadership? This is a debate that has been raging pretty much forever.
Because, while the experts do have a kind of scorecard, the story it tells is often completely different from the one you might hear in the news or, just talking with friends. So, let's start with the professionals. How do the people who actually study this stuff for a living come up with their rankings?
Well, one of the most respected tools we have comes from C-SPAN. Yeah, that C-SPAN. They regularly survey over 140 presidential historians and other pros to get a really balanced expert consensus. It's kind of the gold standard.
And this is not just about gut feelings. The historians grade each president on 10, count them, 10 specific leadership qualities. You've got the big external stuff like crisis leadership and international relations, but also the internal skills, like how they handled the economy or worked with Congress. It's a super detailed report card that even gets into things like moral authority and whether they pursued equal justice for all.
And pretty much every single time they do this survey, one name consistently lands at the top: Abraham Lincoln. He is the benchmark. He sets the bar for what historians consider presidential greatness.
And at the absolute other end of the spectrum, James Buchanan. He's ranked 44th out of 44 presidents. His failure to handle the crisis that spiraled into the Civil War almost always lands him at the very bottom of the list.
But here's where it gets really interesting. These rankings aren't carved in stone. They actually change. Take Ulysses S. Grant. For a long time, he was way down at number 33. But as historians have started reevaluating his work on civil rights, he shot all the way up to number 20.
And we see this with recent presidents too. As time goes on and we get more perspective, their reputations can change a lot. Barack Obama has climbed into the top 10 since he left office, and George W. Bush has moved up from 36 all the way to 29. See? History's judgment is a really, really long game.
But look, the historian's view is only one piece of this puzzle. Public opinion? That often paints a completely different picture. And that brings us to our second point, this clash between perception and consensus.
So while historians are trying to take this long, detached view, the public, well, we often judge presidents through a much more immediate and, let's be honest, partisan lens. And the disagreements can be staggering.
I mean, to see just how wide this gap is, just look at this YouGov poll from 2019. It asked a pretty wild question. Who was the better president, Trump or Lincoln? Now, Democrats and independents overwhelmingly chose Lincoln, but a 53% majority of Republicans said Trump was better.
So you end up with this incredible contrast. On one side, you have the historians in that C-SPAN survey ranking Donald Trump 41st out of 44. And on the other, you have a majority of his own party's voters ranking him above the guy historians considered the greatest of all time. It's a perfect example of two completely different scorecards.
So all of this brings us to a third way of looking at the question. What if we just strip away both the historical judgment and the public perception and just look at what actually happened?
The Washington Monthly actually tried this. They created something called a Presidential Accomplishment Index. And the idea is super simple. Make a big list of what a president actually did in office. Laws signed, major policies changed, and just let the record speak for itself.
So let's take a big one, healthcare. This method lets you do a direct side-by-side comparison. For instance, the Trump administration ended surprise medical billing and required price transparency. The Biden administration, on the other hand, lowered drug prices for seniors and capped insulin costs for those on Medicare. See? It's not about good or bad, it's just a straight-up list of what got done.
So, after looking at all these different methods, what's the big takeaway here? How do we ultimately decide what makes a president great? Well, we've seen three totally distinct lenses. You've got the historian's long-term view, based on those specific leadership qualities. Then there's the immediate, often partisan view from the court of public opinion. And finally, you have that concrete policy-focused checklist of pure accomplishments.
At the end of the day, there's no single definitive answer. Whether a president is considered great seems to depend entirely on which of these scorecards you decide to use. Is it about character, popularity, or is it just about a checklist of results?
And that really brings the whole question back to you. When you judge a leader, what are the criteria that matter most? Is it their vision, their popularity, or just what they actually delivered? Definitely something to think about.